Jerry was talking to me about what I'm going to talk about this evening. I'm not going to preach a new one. I'm not even going to preach at you. I just want to talk to you about some things. And it's going to be out of Philippians chapter 4, for those of you that are curious about this. And the reason I put this thing together years and years and years ago was because it used the term finally, brethren. And I thought, what a great way to end a revival or end a meeting with finally, brethren, and it would be kind of the last admonition. But I told Jerry I preach it different these days than when I put it together. You see, when I put it together as prophetical. This is something that could happen. This is something that might occur. This is something you might run into. Half a century later, I preach it as it's happened. There's no theory in what I'm telling you today. It has happened. It's happened in this place. It's happened in every place we've ever been. And if you go very long at all, you'll know what I'm talking about. Therefore, my brethren, dearly beloved and longed for, my joy and crown, so stand fast in the Lord, my dearly beloved. You see, I used to think that that was like yours truly, or in Christian love, and that's just the way you end a letter. Stand fast in the Lord. You know, with the Corinthian brethren, he told them pretty much the same thing, that in 1 Corinthians 15, there at the end, that they were to stand fast. He told them their labor was not in vain in the Lord. Why would he do that in all these letters, or a lot of these letters? I wouldn't say all of them, but a lot of these. Let me tell you why. It may be several years before I come back. I've got a bad habit. And I'll tell Bev, well, you know, I was just down there the other day. She goes, Marlon, that's 5 years ago. It was, to me, it's the other day, you know. And it may be 5 years before I hold a meeting here again. Some of you will not be here. I don't mean some of you may not be here. Some of you will not be here. Now, some will go on to the reward. They'll finish the course. They'll finish the fight. And henceforth, there's laid up a crown of righteousness that they've strove for. Some will move and go to other places for job opportunities like that, and you'll be going to other congregations. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is some of you today will not be here because you quit. You walked away. You think I'm wrong? Think back over the years, those of you that can do that. Think back over the years and look and see people you used to know that no longer go to church with us. I guarantee you, I will come back and I'll go, where's brother so-and-so? Where's sister so-and-so? And you know what you're going to tell me? Oh, they quit going. They gave up. Now, I don't have any Houston football stories because the last coach I remember being in Houston was Bum Phillips. And some of you are so young, yeah, that means absolutely nothing to you. It's hard to believe. But but some of you know who I'm talking about. But I got some just general one. Bill Parcells coached the Cowboys. You know what he did when he got a team ready for the playoff? He had a montage over his long coaching career of what he called bloopers. And he said there's always one guy. And boy, you know how he was. And you could see the bitterness in his voice. There's always one guy that makes a bonehead play that cost his whole team and the city the championship. And then he would play this video, which is a montage of these knuckleheads that did stuff they'd taught not to do from the time they were in Little League. And then he would end it, and he goes, I want you to know we're going to be playing in a playoff game. Somebody is going to do this. Don't be that guy. You know what? Some of you are going to quit. Some may get mad. Some may get their feelings hurt. Some may walk away. Don't be that guy. Don't be the one that gives up the reward. Don't be the one that quits the race. Don't be the one that stops. Don't be that guy. Stand fast. And the reason Paul told him that is these people that he's talking to knew they would have that problem. It's not a new problem. It's been going on since, I guess, the church was established. So I want to give you this admonition. Stand fast in the Lord. Don't quit. Don't give up. And I want you to know this is not just to members of the church. This is to elders. We know of elders that have quit. Deacons, we know of deacons that have quit. Preachers, we know of evangelists that have quit. Don't be that guy. Don't let that happen to you and your family. I beseech Euodias, beseech Syntyche, that they be of the same mind in the Lord. And by the way, Ty, I think there ought to be a law that guys from Texas can't speak Greek. It's sad. And I have no idea what these guys' real names were, and why would a mama name a kid that anyway? I mean, that had to be hard for everybody, you know what I mean? Couldn't be Tom or John, it had to be this stuff. But he told them to be of the same mind. Let me ask you something. What's your greatest asset here? What's the greatest thing you got to offer? Why does this church exist? I mean, you've got a community out there, you're trying to bring people in. Why? If there's no difference in you and any other church down the road, what's the difference? What is it? And what is it that's going to draw people to you that would make them want to come here instead of somewhere else? You ever think about that? I've thought about that over the years. You know, when I first come to the church, I wasn't looking for your doctrine. I would hear guys get up and it goes, it seems like, and of course I was people of the world then, goes, it seems like people of the world aren't interested in the truth. I'm interested in the truth, I just didn't think you had it. Sorry. I thought you were dead wrong on some things. And that caused a lot of trouble. They're little blonde-haired girls. Well, I went. Let's be honest about this here. I could care less. I went into the first time I went to Gunner, they had about 25 people or so. And they sang like we sang Do, Re, Mi, did that kind of thing, you know, and all that. And I'd never seen shape notes. 19 years old, never seen shape notes. I looked through that book and I go, they messed up every one of these pages. There's not a song in here that ain't messed up. It's got all these, you know, different, I didn't know what it was. And then they just started singing. And after church, I thought, well, maybe they're a little group. And I said, Bev, y'all don't have a piano? And she goes, no. And I said, well, I go to a big church, maybe we can get one. And Bev had the audacity to say, we don't need it. Yeah, you did. From my worldly standpoint, trust me on this one, darling, you need this. This will help you greatly. But I didn't come looking for a piano or not a piano and the doctrinal things and all that. I'll tell you what I was looking for. I was looking for a place to fit in. Years ago, when we first come to the Houston area, you go up down the road and they were trying to hire people, and a lot of farm kids migrated down to this part. And I found out that a bunch of these kids were a long way from home in a big city and didn't know anybody, and they were looking for a family. And folks, if the church can't fill that bill, why are we here? Your unity, your love for each other is your greatest asset. That is what is going to draw people to you like a moth to a flame if you truly love and care about each other. And you care about them. They don't want to come in and share your problems. They want to come in and be a part of the family of God. They want to have people that care about them. And if we can't fill that bill, let's go to the house, boys. I guarantee you, we got to be able to fill that bill. When I was growing up, we had an ice box. And I don't use the term icebox to mean refrigerator. I mean a souped up Yeti. That's what this thing was, an oversized Yeti or igloo. And you would take 50-pound blocks of ice. Some of you may remember this kind of stuff. And they had these little fork things. I mean, you pull it apart, you pick it up, and you can set it in there. And, you know, you do that all day. You're a hoss, I guarantee you that. But we were little kids, and it's hot July. And we would go to the ice house, me and my cousins. Well, actually, we rode in the back of the pickup. I know it's illegal. It wasn't illegal then. And you could even drop a kid or two, and they didn't say too much about it back then. So we get right in the back of this pickup, and we go over to the ice house where they got them big 50-pound blocks, and it's 105 in the shade. And, of course, we got our short pants on. Half the time we didn't have a shirt. Most of the time we didn't have shoes. And so we're standing there, and that was on purpose, not because we didn't have it, because we didn't want it, you know. But this guy would come out that ran the ice house, and he had coveralls on that were thick and gloves. And I mean, how he didn't have a heat stroke from the office to the refrigerated area, I don't know. But when them boys are standing, I remember this old man to this day, and he'd reach out and grab that handle with that big glove, and he'd go, "Are you ready?" And we go, "Give it to us." And he'd pull that open, and you could see it was like smoke coming out of there. And when it hit your head, it is frozen, and it go boom, like that and give you a headache. And we loved it. We thought that was the greatest thing in the world. Half time you were dizzy, you know, and you had a brain freeze. It was great. That's okay if you're running an ice house. That's terrible if you're running a church. If they open the back door and they get the same feeling I got at that ice house, see where we're going with this? That's terrible. Stay together. Be unified. Care about each other. Don't leave anybody behind. Let's all get to the promised land and make it together. That's unity. I'm going to tell you something. There is not an enemy that Satan has ever thrown at you people that you can't whip. You can win any war you get in. The denominations are not going to touch you. The atheists are not going to touch you. The government's not going to hurt you. But there's one you can't win. You can't win a civil war. We won't win civil wars. Isn't that what Jesus prayed for unity in John 17 all about? Now, I know we're Church of Christ. We get things going good and the church starts growing and we're doing real good. We got to pull a pistol out and shoot ourselves in the foot. I don't know why we do that, but we do. Stay together. I was reading the words of Paul when he was talking to some of the congregations, and I realized this is what every elder that's ever existed really wants. He said that I may present you to Christ without spot and blameless. You know what elders want to do? When I stand before God, I want to be able to say, Lord, here's your flock. They're all here, and we even picked up a few along the way. We stayed together. Stay together. Care about each other. Stay away from those civil wars that destroy us. I entreat thee also, true yokefellow, help those women which labor with me in the gospel, with Clement also, and with other fellow laborers whose names are in the book of life. Don't put 50% of your workforce on the bench, boys. The Bible talks about work. Ty read Romans 16, which I will not go and attempt to do, but he read about how many women were involved in the work. Don't you think it's odd? Maybe I'm the only one that thinks like this. I don't know. But I think it's kind of ironic that Paul is over there in what we would call Turkey today, Ionia, and he gets the Macedonian call. And he sees a man of Macedonia and saying, come preach and help us. So he goes to Macedonia, and the first person he runs into is a woman. Does not anybody find that odd? It was Lydia, the seller of purple. And if you were selling purple, that was very expensive, and so she probably had money. Paul talks later on about the Philippians communicated once and again to his needs. Succor of many and myself, Romans 16. You reckon the seller of purple had anything to do with that, ladies? Their part in the gospel was huge. Now, I have heard older preachers and generations before say probably what they did was travel with Paul and fixed his socks. No, they labored in the gospel. They labored in the gospel. Let me give you something to think about here. We get to doing premarital counseling with young people that are going to get married. And I found out later it's not because of my great experience and ability at this. It's because the marriage license is $119 unless you talk to Marlon, you get it for $40. So, I mean, maybe the motivation. But at any rate, I kept thinking, there's something wrong with what I'm doing. I am not reaching these kids like I ought to be. So I'm having coffee one morning, and I'm reading the Bible and going through it, and I get over to Titus, where it says the older women teach the younger women. You know what it dawned on me? No matter how hard I try, I will never understand you women. I can't. You really are from a different planet. Sorry about that. And no matter how hard I try, I will not be a young woman getting married. I will not be a young mother. I will not be a wife putting up with a cantankerous husband. I will never know what you go through, ladies. And I looked over there and standing in the kitchen, I go, but there's somebody that does. You know what happened? She sits down. When we do it now, she sits beside me. And it just changed that game totally. Because now I've got somebody that understands what this young lady is going through. And by the way, older is a relative term. It means been there, done that. Now, I know this when our girls had babies. I did not realize that Bev had a medical degree. I didn't. But I know this, that phone would ring in the middle of the night and go, we got a rash. What do we do? And she would talk them down out of the tree, and don't throw the baby out with the wash, nothing like that kind of a thing, and tell them what to do. They call mama, don't they? I have never had one of my daughters call me and say, Daddy, what do I do about his fever? And because Dad works on this theory, if you give them a little bit of medicine and it does some good, double that Hummer. It'll knock it right out, won't it? No, that's what, there's a reason they don't call Dad on that kind of stuff. Now, I'll tell you what, my oldest daughter, when her boy was getting up pretty good size, she goes, Daddy, how do you know when to start disciplining them? And my first thought was, when you can't stand it no more. But we talked about, no, you don't get on a kid for being a kid. You get on a kid when they defy you. And we talked about, Daddy understood something about that, but he's not the medical guy. We want the women involved in our work. We want the women laboring in the gospel. They did in Romans, they did in Philippians, they did all through the scriptures, and they need to be here too. Don't put 50% of the workforce on the bench, whose names are in the book of life. We got a successful meeting. I thought it was. I didn't get run off after a day or two. That's usually a pretty good sign that we got a good meeting. Have you had a successful meeting? And how do you know what's a successful meeting? Judge that one. I'm going to tell you what, if we leave here and every single one of you, your name is in the book of life, you had a good meeting. The brethren went to the labor, the work, the expense, the effort to put this meeting on so that your name would be in the book of life. And if it is, it's a successful meeting. And if you walk out of here and your name is not there, it was a failure. We didn't get it done. Is your name in the book of life? When I was growing up playing football for the school, I was a freshman. And of course, that means that translates to cannon fodder. So, for the older guys to practice on. But we had a coach, and I didn't realize how coaches thought and worked. But this coach came up to this senior boy, and he said, John, you're a wimp. No harder than you hit, you ought to be wearing a toboggan instead of that football helmet. Get off team. Marlon, you're starting. You're the guard. For the next week, this kid tended to dance all over me. He pounded me every chance. We broke 3 helmets. He was hitting me so hard. So, but come game day, I'm still with the first team. So I tell my parents, I tell everybody, I tell the family, I'm the starting guard. I held on. That's all I did too, baby. I was just held on. I was glad that week's over. And so we're sitting there on the bus, and he reads the name of the defense. That's fine. I'm back up on defense. That's cool. And got down to the name, and he called that other kid's name. He didn't call my name. My heart just sank. You told me I was the starter. I've got the whole family waiting, and my name's not there. Look again, there's got to be a mistake. Now, I know what he was doing, because when I was a senior, this guy goes, Marlon, you're a wimp. No harder than you hit, you ought to be wearing a toboggan instead of a football helmet. Get off my team. You see, he's trying to motivate that older kid, wasn't he? For that freshman boy that was so heartbroken, there was next year, and next year, and the next year. We had 4 years of that. Some of us, it took 5 or 6 to get out of the 4-year program. But there was always next year. On this day, when that book and those names are written, there is no next year. Is your name there? The brethren had a successful meeting if your name's in the book of life, and you're confident with that. But if it's not, then we failed you. And we don't want you leaving here unless your name is there. Over the last 50 years, I've preached that. Then how come people ain't been doing it? Sometimes people get tired of you preaching the same old thing. Well, when are we going to start doing it? Start doing that, we'll get a new one. Maybe there's another place that says, finally, brethren. And I think that's pretty cool, and we'll go with it. Is your name in the book of life? Only you know. God. So I hope that you make sure that it is. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. Sometimes we treat God as a vending machine or a stock market. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. One of the guys at home came to me and said, Marlon, I got a problem with our prayer list. It's great. You think, well, shouldn't pray for the sick? He goes, no. He goes, but when the people get healed, we just erase the name, go on. When's the last time we said thank you? And I thought, he's right. I'm asking God, Lord, give me this. Lord, give me that. You know what? I think I did the Lord this way several times. I really think I have. But I got so lucky when my children were growing up. They had these games called Nintendo and Atari. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Some of you can buy them as a throwback now. And I ran to the store to buy those for my children. You know why? Daddy, if you'll get us this, we'll never ask for nothing again. Deal. You know when they started asking for something else? When they opened the thing up and it needed accessories. I mean, they hadn't got it out of the box and they was asking for something else. Jeremy was probably a year and a half old or something like that. We were living in the valley at the time. He might have been 2, I don't know. But we were living in the Rio Grande Valley at the time, and I bought him a train. Oh, I don't mean a train. I mean a train. Bev was dying. She hated that thing. Her daddy and I sat up all Christmas Eve putting that train together. He rode it around the house. Had a whistle and a bell. That was a mistake. Young guys, that's a mistake. And it blew smoke. Second mistake. And it had some assembly required. Huge mistake. You know what I'm talking about. So I can't wait for this kid to get up, and I spent money I didn't have on something that Bev didn't want, because I thought this is the greatest thing. I wanted a train. I thought that's cool. And he got up, he looked at it, didn't even touch it. Tried to set him on it, he'd cry. You know what he wanted to play with? He'd got a bubble thing out of a 25-cent machine at the Dairy Queen. He wanted to hear it rattle. I was heartbroken. I took it very personal. And I got to wondering, after all God's given us, and we don't say thank you, you reckon he feels like I felt that day? Now, eventually the kid caught up with the program. Don't get me wrong. And Bev could go back to hating that train because he did get to where he could run that train. I want you to know that. But that day, it was like he didn't appreciate nothing I'd done for him. You ever felt that way? You know what we call that? Now, I know this is a little old kid. That's not what I'm talking about. But when some people do that to us, you know what we call it? We call it being used. You like being used? Gimme, gimme, gimme. And then when you can't give no more, we'll find somebody else to gimme, gimme, gimme. How do you feel about that? How do you think the Father feels about that? So I got to thinking, at home, when somebody recovers, gets out of the hospital, we take time to thank God for that. Maybe we ought to be a little more thankful to God about our salvation, about the opportunity to be in the kingdom. He's given us great things. You know what I'll do? I buy a car and then gripe about the payment. I buy a house and I gripe about the mortgage. And I don't stop and go, thank you for a place to live and I don't have to walk. But we gripe. Maybe we ought to be a little more thankful. Just something to consider there. The peace of God which passes all understanding shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. I'm not going to explain to you the peace of God that passes all understanding. That's kind of anyway, isn't it? It's like the secret things are left to God, and I have people go, what are those? They do. And so if you haven't experienced the peace of God that passes all understanding, it's hard to explain. And it's an understanding of the world. How can these people be in a prison about to die and they're singing praises and praying to God? Because they knew no matter what happened in the world, in their world, their future was secure with their God. That's the kind of peace of mind that we need, folks. That when you go to bed at night, you know you're right with God. You'll sleep good. Now, I know we all have days that things don't go well. I understand that. But in a general sense, Paul getting beat up was not his favorite day. But he had the peace of God that passes understanding because he knew his soul was secure in his God. Is yours? if you lose everything tomorrow, is it okay? Years ago, Bev and I had a fire, and we lost everything. 20-something years of living was gone in 12 minutes. I didn't even have a pair of shoes. Did get the motorcycle out. You know what I thought, and this is crazy, I don't know what I'm telling you this for, but we just bought a new VCR camera. And I thought, it was sitting right there. Why didn't I grab that when I went out the door? You know, and people would come up and they would just hug us and just feel so bad about we'd lost everything out there. I didn't feel bad at all. We go to Walmart and buy more heirlooms. I mean, it's not that big a deal, folks. You know what? We didn't lose anybody. All the kids, the wife, myself, we all got out. We didn't lose anybody. We were blessed. And we were able to rebuild and all that. And it's kind of a joke thing, kept the same wife and kids. But, you know, built a better house to start with. One that didn't burn down this time. How's that for, you know? But people cry over physical things. You have the peace of God passes understanding. That stuff don't matter. That's not where the game is. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Now, I am not going to go down the list and do honesty, truth. Whoever gets to talk Wednesday night, there's your topic. There, it's a gimme, freebie, take it, and all that. I don't want to go through all this and talk about what even meant there and all that, but I'll tell you what I do want to talk about. Think on these things. I know we misapply it to some extent, but as a man thinketh, so is he. What do you think about most of the time? I always like this one here. I was 17 years old, and we had career day at our little school. And that guy lied to us. He got in there and said, what you think about the most is what you're going to be. I'd have been a girl. That's not what he really had in mind, was it? But what do you think about all the time? What is it worldly things? Is it spiritual things? What are the things we concentrate on the most? As a man thinketh, so is he. When you look at life, we've known several older men in our little town, and there was one guy that, I'm not kidding you, he showed up, it clouded up and rained. He hated his wife, he hated his kids, he hated his job, he hated the government, he hated the town, he hated us. And then he couldn't figure out why nobody wanted to hang around him. And you know what? He was a self-fulfilling prophecy. No matter what happened, he could see the bad in it. And it came to pass because he fulfilled his own prophecy. And then there was another older fella that all the kids just flocked to. He had a bad leg, so he would drive with his leg up under, you know, kind of in the figure four thing, but, you know, seat and all that. And he had a little hand control deal. One day he got away from it. He ran through the post office. And they tell him, what happened to you? Checking the mail. Didn't get nothing. And he just laughed about it. I mean, he was just a pleasure to be around. What was the difference in those two men? Right here. The difference was right there. What do we concentrate on? What do we think about? Do we look at life as good and there's opportunity? Or are we down and negative and all that? The guys that are in evangelism know what I'm talking about. You go to a church and they go, well, okay, let's get out there. Let's pass out some circulars. Let's talk to people. Let's get people to come. We done that. Didn't work. My goodness, let's don't do it again. Wouldn't want to waste $30. I mean, on the printing. Good night. You know what I'm talking about, folks. You know, we had a deal, and I finally convinced the brethren of this years ago that we were working with, that we divided our town up into squares, and that was my field. I had this part of town was mine, and once a month I passed out circulars on it. Same houses, same thing, 12 times in a year. You know where I got that? I got that watching my father-in-law farm. You know, he didn't come back to me and say, and I go, Dad, don't you think we need to plow that field? We did it last year and it just grew back. You think he plowed it one time? He went over that ground and over that ground and over that ground, and he prepared that soil, and then he planted the seed, and eventually there was a harvest. How do we think about this stuff, folks? As a man thinketh, so is he. Some of you know that growing up and in little younger days, worked with getting horses started. I understand the verse where Jesus rode into town on a horse on which man had not sat. I have been on horses on which a man has not sat, and some still haven't sat on him. I know what that is like. But you know, the old cowboys that would kind of direct me with that, you know what they'd tell me? Don't you ever hook that horse to something he can't pull. Because if you do, he'll quit and he'll never try again. He weighs 1,200 pounds, and the dog let him. Because in his mind, he couldn't do it. That's what he thought. As a man thinketh, what's our thoughts on? How's our outlook? I'm going to give you something else these old cowboys taught me. I bought a little 8-in Ford tractor. If you don't know what that is, you'll have to look it up. It's one step above a lawn and garden deal. And no matter how fast you try, and no matter how hard you work, you're getting 1 acre an hour. I'm bowing with this thing. I'm getting 1 acre an hour. It didn't matter. You're getting 1 acre an hour. So I go to the sale, and I'm sitting there looking at the horses and all these old cowboys over there, and they're spitting and doing whatever it is old cowboys do. And I tell them, I go, how in the world did you guys ever farm with that stuff? And one of them looked at me and goes, I'll tell you why, boy. Because you never walked behind a mule. And I got to thinking, you know, he's right about that. I'm sitting here griping about this tractor. I did own a mule one time. Jameson, you'll love this story. I had that mule for 8 days. He was on the place too. I caught him on the 4th day, put him in the trailer, and took him back to the sale. And so whenever I told him everything wrong with this thing, how stubborn he was, how mean he was, and how he wouldn't stay at home and all that. And I said, if you bid $1, you bought a mule. And the auctioneer goes, he's telling you the truth, boys. He's been here 20 minutes and ain't said one good thing about him. And I decided I don't want a mule. I'll take my tractor. But you see, in my mind, all of a sudden, this tractor's not cool. I hadn't unloaded the Hummer. That I'm thinking, I can take this to the auction, and I can sell it and get a better one. And I hadn't even started it. See, it's right here, isn't it? As a man thinketh. Now, when it comes to horses, tractors, things like that, you can think what you want to about it. My horse never did anything because he liked me. They go, how did you get that horse to track cattle like that? I said, well, I hate him and he can't stand me, but we both hate cows, and so we work good together. Right here, isn't it? But when it comes to your spiritual life, what you think about, you know, this is an old story, and I know you've heard it. There was a gentleman that was going to divorce his wife and went to the lawyer, and the lawyer gave him some advice. He said, he goes, I want to hurt her. He's angry. He goes, I want to hurt her. And he said, you go home and you be sweet to her. You buy her flowers. You bring her candy. You pull her chair out. You open doors for her. You just lay it on. And then do it for 90 days. And then we'll hit her with the papers and it'll rip her heart out. So the guy does. He goes home and he does this junk. And sees the lawyer walking down the street and goes, you ready for the divorce? He goes, oh no, she changed. Think about that one. You be going down the road going, that's a good one. What changed? Was it her? It was him, the way he thought about it. Guys, we can talk ourselves in and out of love. We can decide we've made a great deal or we've made a terrible deal. And it's right here. Now, my dad gave me marital advice just before I married Bev. He said, son, if you marry the right one, there ain't nothing like it. He said, if you marry the wrong one, there ain't nothing like that either. And that's where he left it. I guess I was going to find out. But, you know, a lot of times our problem is because we made the problem because of the way we think. That's why he said, think on these things. The body follows the mind. I believe that. Did you know that in every one of these passages about change, he talks about being renewed in knowledge, a change of mind, which is a change of heart. It starts right here. Jesus knew that if he could change your thinking up here, he could change your actions. Work on it. Let's work on that. Then he said, those things which you have both learned and received and heard and seen in me do, and the God of peace shall be with you. The things I'm telling you to do, do them. And God will be with you. Your life will be rich. You will have the abundant life that Jesus came to give you and wants you to have. He doesn't want you to suffer. He doesn't want you to have bad times and bad things in your life. He wants you to have life abundantly, and then he wants to give you eternal life. How do you do that? Trust the Spirit. It's not in man that walks to direct his steps. God knows what you need. I don't know how to be a dad. I don't know how to be a husband. But I found somebody that did. And when I started doing what God told me to do, my world changed. I'm totally sold that if you follow what God has told you to do in this book, you will have an abundant life. Are you in the book of life? Are you right with God? When you go to bed tonight, are you going to have the peace of God that passes all understanding?